Hello everyone, how are you? How things are going? I hope that everything is well with you. Today we are going to start with our fifth lecture in poetry, and I think we are going to pursue our discussion of the use and the function of personification in poetry. If you still remember, last time we finished with a poem that has personification as its major figure of speech. And at the end of the lecture, I told you that we're going to take individual examples from different poets in order to examine the role of personification in these lines. Today I've picked a number of examples. As usual, I started with Shakespeare, and here I have two lines by Shakespeare in which he personifies time as follows. When I have seen by time's fell hand defaced the rich proud coast of outworn buried age. Now, if we look at the personification, and of course I'm referring to page 64, we notice that Shakespeare personifies time as a person who has a hand. And this hand destroys beauty. So time is personified as a person who has a cruel, destructive hand. So is the effect of time on the human being friendly or unfriendly? Actually, it's an unfriendly effect. As time passes, it destroys beauty. So Shakespeare here has a personification example, which is also an implied metaphor, where the tenor is time and the vehicle is not mentioned. Instead of mentioning the vehicle, Shakespeare alludes to the vehicle. So he uses hand, and hand is associated with human beings. So the function of this personification, as you can feel, is the destructiveness of time. And you know that time is an abstract concept. In order to make time clear to us, Shakespeare personified time, and you can imagine the visual image which is in the figure of speech. Time is a human being. This human being has a hand, and this hand has a destructive tool that destroys beauty all the time. The second example is quoted from Milton, John Milton, and this was an occasional sonnet written on the occasion of Milton's 23rd birthday. I will quote two lines from the poem. Milton says, "How soon hath time, the subtle thief of youth, stolen on his wing my 23rd year. How soon hath time, the subtle thief of youth, stolen on his wing my 23rd year." Again, here we're talking about time. And John Milton personifies time somehow differently. So instead of having a destructive hand like we saw in Shakespeare, time becomes a thief, stealing the years of life away. If you analyze the figure of speech, we notice that this is an example of an implied metaphor. The tenor is time, and the vehicle is thief. Usually the thief is a person, so there is no need to mention that the vehicle is person. It's enough just to mention the word thief. I think this is a very deep example of personification. We notice that Milton tried to say that our age or our time is a precious thing. And everybody knows that thieves steal things that have value. So time is a thief and steals our life. But if you think about the implications, a real thief is often caught and sent to prison. But is this true of time? Have you ever heard of filing a case against time, sending him to prison? Definitely no. But is the effect of time less dangerous? Again, no. Time has an unfriendly effect on us, and time is the thief of youth that goes unpunished. And Milton was very skillful in the use of diction, specifically when he said the subtle. I remember I read the word subtle in the Old Testament, specifically in the book of Genesis, and that was in the description of the snake or the serpent, the creature that has always been associated with the fall of Adam and Eve. The serpent is the subtlest of the creatures because it's sly and deceptive. So time is again subtle, that is sly and deceptive, and goes unnoticed. Milton even makes his figure of speech more effective as he uses a metaphor in the second line, and the metaphor is implied. He refers to something that we all know by using wing. So time has a wing, and usually birds have wings. So there is an implied metaphor where the tenor is time and the vehicle is not mentioned, but it is hinted at. So the writer mentions something closely associated with the vehicle, which is wing. So Milton in the second line likens time to a thief with wings. So as we can see, Milton made the abstract thing concrete. Milton made the abstract thing concrete. Time is an abstract concept, and it was made concrete by describing it as a thief and then describing it as a bird. If we move to the third example, we notice that Ralph Waldo Emerson uses personification to express feelings and thoughts about time in his poem Days. What does Emerson say about time? He says, "Daughters of time, the hypocritic days, muffled and dumb like barefoot dervishes, and marching single in an endless file, bring diadems and fagots in their hands." Well, a very profound example of personification. Daughters of time. So days become daughters of time. And in doing so, Emerson personified both time and days. Time becomes a parent who can breed children, and daughters are children. So days are having the quality of the human beings. So days are likened to daughters, which means that the poet personified days, and time becomes a parent. And another example here is the use of the word hypocritic. I think that hypocritic is also related to human beings. So in the first line, we have two examples of personification. Days become daughters, and time is a parent. Now, after having said that, the poet tries to illustrate his figure of speech by saying that these days are muffled and dumb. They don't speak, they don't talk, but they walk. How do they walk? This is explained in another figure of speech here, which is the simile. So, days is the tenor, and the vehicle is barefoot dervishes with an indicator of resemblance, which is like. So, days are likened to dervishes, poor people, who walk without having shoes. They are shoeless. And usually, if you think of dervishes, they are poor people with whom we sympathize. But what do these dervishes do? And marching single in an endless file. They are marching, they are walking. And while doing so, they might bring two things to the human beings. One of them is diadems, and the other is fagots. So days hide surprises for us. Some of these surprises are really beautiful. They are exactly like crowns or diadems. Or they could be bad. They are like fagots, bad things. So in life, there are rewards and there are punishments. Wow, a very deep figure of speech, where the unceasing progression of time and the good and the evil that days bring are vividly realized through the image of the personified days marching in single file, bringing good things as well as bad things. Here again, we notice that Emerson made the abstract thing concrete. But he did not speak of a thief like Milton, but he spoke of dervishes, and he spoke of time as having daughters. The last example is going to be from the great poet Alexander Pope, and specifically from his masterpiece, An Essay on Man, where we notice that the poet endows vice not only with appearance but with personality as well. So the topic, as you can imagine, is vice, and vice is going to be personified so that we could recognize it. Because one big function of figures of speech is to make the abstract concrete. So what does Pope say about vice? Vice is a monster of so frightful mien as to be hated needs but to be seen. Yet seen too oft, familiar with her face, we first endure, then pity, then embrace. So where is the tenor? It's vice. And where is the vehicle? It's monster. Obviously, Alexander Pope likens vice to a monster. And what kind of face does this monster have? It has a frightful mien. Frightful mien here means like horrific facial aspects. Horrific facial aspects or features. In order to hate the monster, we just need to have a look at it. Yeah. This reminds me of Beauty and the Beast. At first, you will be frightened when you see the beast. Then there is a sort of familiarity with the beast. In order to hate Vice, you need to see it, but be careful. Don't see vice too often, because if you do, you will become familiar with her face. And what's the dangerous thing in seeing vice? We have the following steps. First, we endure. And endure here means like I start to be familiar and tolerant when it comes to vice. Then we have pity. We feel sorry for vice, and then we embrace. So it seems to me that the poet is warning us against familiarizing ourselves with vice or seeing vice too often, and by implication probably associating ourselves with people who represent vice. So vice becomes a person with appearance and personality, and vice is one of the abstract nouns. You know that vice reminds us of virtue, and both of them are semantically classified as abstract nouns. So again and again we notice that personification makes the abstract thing concrete. So it seems that Pope is warning us against familiarizing ourselves with vice. And having said that, we come to the end of our discussion about personification in poetry. And I think we need to move to another figure of speech just to refresh your memory of the things we taught you during your study of Introduction to Literature, and then to move and see how these figures of speech are functional in poetry. Because in introduction, you know, we just introduce things and we don't have time for a detailed description of figures of speech and their functions in poetry. So in our course, we try to just remind you of what we said earlier in the previous course, and then to add to it, or probably to build on it, so that you could see how figures of speech are functional in poetry. Today we will move to two more closely related figures of speech. And these two figures of speech are metonymy and synecdoche. Metonymy and synecdoche. So in order to know what we are talking about, I think you need to go to page 65. 65 mentions the difference between metonymy and synecdoche and offers some hints at the meaning of both figures of speech. But before I go into details about metonymy and synecdoche in poetry, I think I need to remind you of some examples that can be found in real life when we talk about metonymy. For example, you might have some knowledge of figures of speech in real life, and I collected a number of things that I have lately heard to share with you. Now, if you watch the news, you might have something like the White House announced something, or Cairo declared something. Now, these are examples of metonymy. Is it possible for the White House to announce something, or for Cairo to declare something? I think we don't mean White House or Cairo. We mean the people who reside there. So we notice that metonymy could be a kind of residential relationship, like when you say Damascus claimed something, the White House said something. You don't mean the city, you don't mean the place, you mean the people who reside in the place. I think this is one example that is used very often. Also, there has been a lot of gossip about Prince Harry and Meghan, etc. So people started saying the English throne negated, the English throne declared, the English throne gave an official statement. So is it possible for the English throne to give a statement? So throne here is associated with whom? It is associated with the Queen of England. So the English throne is a metonymy for the monarch who controls or who rules England. You might have something like he keeps good table. He keeps good table. And the meaning here is he keeps good food. So we have a kind of relationship that we call container for the thing contained. Container for the thing contained. It's very much like the examples which are abundant in real life. Like I drank a cup of coffee, she ate 2 plates of rice, he drank a bottle of juice. Actually, this is a good occasion to tell you that all these examples are metonymies, and we mention the container for the thing contained. I don't think we swallow a plate, we just eat the rice. We don't swallow a bottle, we just drink the juice which is in the bottle. So again, this is another kind of metonymy. Another example that I have in mind is quoted from the Bible, the book of Genesis, where God was talking to Adam after the fall, and after Adam was supposed to be expelled from heaven. So God punished him by telling him, with the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread. Now, what does it mean to say, with the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread? Well, sweat here is to be understood as a result of hard work. So sweat here is metonymic, like we say in Arabic, kinayatan an. It's metonymic of hard labor. And in modern English, we say he earned his living with the sweat of his brow, with the sweat of his brow. So the sweat is metonymic of hard labor and hard work. I can also recall an example from Shakespeare's Macbeth, where Macbeth started to become more aggressive, and he regretted the fact that he did not kill someone before this someone escaped. So he says, "This is my hand, will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red. This is my hand, will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red." Now notice the use of a green for the sea in English. In Arabic, I think we say, like we have in Nizar Qabbani's poem, "Al-Mawju al-Azraqu fi aynay." So it's blue in Arabic, whereas it's green in English. So we notice that if we want to analyze the example here, we notice that Macbeth says that he will change the color of the sea from green into red. And I think you are familiar with this, specifically in Arabic. So what do we do to change the color of the sea? Or is that possible at all? What Shakespeare here means is that he will kill a lot of people. He will kill a lot of people. So the red here is metonymic of mass killing, or killing so many people. Probably you are familiar with what we say in Arabic. بدنا نخلي الدم للركب. I think we don't do that, no matter how many people are killed, but this is meant to be metonymic of killing so many people. However, there is a subcategory of metonymy known as synecdoche. Synecdoche, page 65. Synecdoche. And synecdoche is a form of metonymy where we mention the part and we mean the whole, or we mention the whole and we mean the part. So all in all, metonymy and synecdoche are examples of substitution. We substitute something for another, or we use a word for another word. I collected again some examples that we find in real life. I think you are familiar with lend me your ears. That is, be attentive, listen to me. Or extend a hand of help. A hand of help. Or referring to having a lot of dependency. Someone might say, he has 9 hungry mouths to feed. Definitely what he has in his house is not just the mouths, but the kids. So the mouth is synecdoche because we mention the part and we mean the whole. Exactly like we mention the ear and we mean the human being in general. Or like mentioning the hand and we mean the entire human being. You can find examples like 50 feet were marching on the bridge. 50 feet. So how many people were marching on the bridge? Yes, 25 people. So the feet here is part for the whole. I don't think that the feet are just marching. The human being was marching. Also, we say he owns 100 heads of sheep. He owns 100 heads of sheep. Do you think he just owns the heads of the sheep? Of course not. He owns the sheep as a whole. So he has 100 sheep. Also, we can say something like he owns 4 wheels. He owns 4 wheels. The wheel is part of the car. But what is meant here is the car as a whole. So we mention the part and we mean the whole. Throughout my teaching of the course, I found that students can always give examples of synecdoche, which is substitution of the whole, the part for the whole. And all of the time they give me examples of hand, ear, mouth. But they find it difficult to give me examples of substituting the whole for the part. Like, I mean, to use the whole and to mean the part. This is what I mean. Well, yes, we have examples where what we mention is the whole and we mean the part. We mention the whole and we mean the part. For example, we might say, I put the package in my coat. I put the package in my coat. Did I really put it in the coat or in the pocket of the coat? Obviously, we use the pocket. So here we mention the coat, which is the whole, and we mean the part, which is the pocket. I saw it in the press. I saw it in the press. Sometimes people just mention press, but they mean a certain newspaper. So he read it in one newspaper, but he said, I saw it in the press. So the press is the whole and the newspaper is the part. Now I shall move to page 66 and cite how metonymies are used in poetry. Let me start with Robert Herrick's To the Virgins, to make much of time, and read these 2 lines. That age is best which is the first, when youth and the blood are warmer. When youth and the blood are warmer. So what does it mean to say that blood is warm? What is it metonymic of? Blood here suggests the emotions and the passions. So when your emotions and passions are warm, it means that you are young. So we notice that warm blood is metonymic of emotions and passions. I mean strong emotions and passions. So this is an excellent example of metonymy. Another example from Shelley, Tonight. His poem is Tonight. And noon lay heavy on flower and tree. And noon lay heavy on flower and tree. Now, why do you think he says that the noon lay heavy on flower and tree? Is it cold or is it hot? I mean the weather. Is the weather hot or cold? Now, the use of heavy here is the clue to the answer. Definitely, the use of heavy implies that it's hot. So, according to Shelley, the heat of the day is described in a form of metonymy. So, the heaviness is metonymic of hot weather. So, the heat and the languor of midday is clarified through metonymy. Now let us move to have examples of synecdoche. James Joyce, in a lyric from chamber music, makes a person into a voice when he says, "Because your voice was at my side, I gave him pain." Because your voice was at my side, I gave him pain. Now, what's the meaning of voice? The voice is part of a whole. The voice is part and the human being is whole. So we here personify, we classify this figure of speech as a synecdoche. He mentions the voice, which is the part, and he means the whole, and the whole is a human being. Another example by Shakespeare, he says, "Nay, if you read this line, remember not the hand that writ it." Now here, as you can see, Shakespeare used hand to mean the whole man. He used the hand to mean the whole man. I think the hand does not write away from the body. So we write as a whole, as human beings, but the writer here mentions hand. Similar to this is Tennyson's example that I will cite here. It's taken from his poem, "Break, Break, Break." What does he say? He says, "And I would that my tongue could utter the thoughts that arise in me." Obviously, when he says, "I would that my tongue could utter the thoughts that arise in me." Now, the thoughts occur to the person, not to the tongue, but the tongue is the tool that we use to express ourselves. So here we notice that Tennyson makes tongue mean the whole man. All right? Another example is from the poem that Houseman wrote. He says, "Is football playing along the river shore with lads to chase the leather? Now I stand up no more." The lads are chasing the leather. Lads, like boys or kids, they chase the leather. Remember, they were playing football. But instead of saying that they were chasing the football, he said they were chasing the leather. So is the football all leather, or do we have some other material? Okay, the football is not only leather. So the use of leather, the material which covers the football, for the football itself. And he used the material that covers the football for the football itself. So it's an example of synecdoche. I hope that the lecture was useful and fruitful, and that it added to your understanding of metonymy and synecdoche. Next time, inshallah, we will talk about another figure of speech. And remember that next time we will start with oxymoron. Till then, goodbye.